Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of How to Draw Cars. Today we're going to talk about the secrets of drawing in perspective, what you need to know to get a perspective car drawing down on the page. This episode is sponsored by a student of the How to Draw Cars program named Mark, who's in the UK. And instead of having a private one-on-one session, Mark wanted to do his session on YouTube. So we're going to use his sketch here as a learning tool to show everyone how to build a structure for a perspective drawing. So if you find any value in this tutorial, please leave a comment not only for me, but for Mark in the comment section and thank him for sponsoring this particular episode. So if we look at Mark's sketch, we see a front three-quarter view in two-point perspective. And the thing that the sketch really suffers from is a lack of structure. The car is sort of floating in space. There's no sense of an interior. There's no sense that the wheels are actually attached to anything. There's really no sense that the car is a three-dimensional form represented in a two-dimensional way. So when we talk about the secrets of a perspective drawing, what I'm talking about is how to build a structure. Building a structure is the single most important thing you can learn how to do after developing your line quality. Why? Because all the drawings you do will be built upon a structure that will make them believable and keep them in proportion. Now, when I talk about structure, what am I talking about? I'm talking about a foundation, and I'm talking about a sort of scaffolding that you're going to build your drawing around. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to put in is my ground plane. Cars sit on the ground. Draw the ground plane in because that's going to connect the car to the world. Once I got my ground plane in, I'm going to draw my front wheel vertical and then the halfway point up that vertical and throw that line back, drawing from my shoulder to start to box in where my ellipses are going to go. So I've got my vertical, I'm eyeing up the size of my ellipse, and I'll draw it in. One motion, front wheel in place. Look back, put in another vertical. Now I should have measured off 3 wheels. If you stop the video and measure it, you'll see that there's 3 wheels between the 2 wheels. I did it visually, but when you're first starting out, you should draw those 3 wheels in between the 2 wheels in a very light way. Next thing I'm going to put in my axles. This is where the heart of my two-point perspective lives. The ground plane line going back in space is going back towards one point, and those axles are going towards the other point on the horizon line. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create basically 2 cylinders in space. I've got one cylinder in the front and one cylinder behind it. And out of those cylinders, I'm going to create where my wheels sit in space. This is the scaffolding that I'm talking about. This is the structure underneath the surface of your car that gives your car a solidity and a three-dimensionality on the page. So I start sectioning off these cylinders, and by doing that, I'm creating where my tires are going to land. So again, I'm working with very light lines. And I'm creating the box, the rectangle in space where my car is going to live. There's my rear wheel, my far rear wheel that I'm not really going to see once the drawing is done, but I know it's there and I know the perspective is correct. And this is key to building your structure. This is one of the secrets of how to draw a car in perspective and get it to look right. So if you stop right there and look, you'll see now all 4 wheels in space without any car body on it. So there's the back side of my rim. Again, another ellipse drawn in one motion. And my rear hub. And if you notice, if you set that line back in space right there, you'll see that all of that follows the two-point perspective that I've set up. So even the wheels are following the same structural pattern, the same scaffolding that the rest of the car is going to follow. Okay, so we've built our scaffolding, we've built our structure, and we've built the structure for our wheels. Now I'm going to come in and hang the body on this structure. So I've got my sill coming back to my quarter, my lower quarter. And then I'm going to take the front part of my lower part of my fascia and wrap that around in space to the other side. See how that relationship is working there? And I draw that relationship around the surface from one side of the car to the other and around the back. So I'm seeing this thing in 3 dimensions in real time as I'm sketching it. So I find my touchdown of my A-pillar and I throw my belt line back in space. And automatically you could start to see the body side coming to being. There's my A-pillar. Into my C-pillar. Now I've got my roof line. And I use that point and throw across the line from my cowl touchdown, my windshield touchdown, the cowl line, and my roof line. So as you can see, the volume of the car is really starting to take shape. I throw in my header and then throw back the other side of the door to really start to create the volume that's going to be my interior. So there's the far side belt line, cowl touchdown, binnacle, my steering wheel, and the passenger seat. Again, all following that same short axis with a 2-point perspective. You start to create a volume inside the vehicle. You get a very 3-dimensional quality, even though you're working on a 2-dimensional space like a sheet of paper. Throw in some side mirrors. And again, where's the far side mirror? Directly across from the driver's side mirror. You can look through the car and you can see all those original structure lines that I put in, and all these elements that I'm adding all follow those same structure lines. Here's my center line, down my hood, and this becomes the section of my front end. Pass side fender. You can see I lean a little bit harder on the pencil there to create a much darker line. It's going to define the far edge of the vehicle. My windshield touchdown, and then try and add some sculptural surface elements to the hood. I come back now and work the body side. There's this huge vent that comes off the area behind the front wheel. And then carrying that line through the fender line, through the door, and back around to the front end. Again, and that's where drawing from your shoulder allows you to make those lines, those sweeping lines through the surface of the car in one grand gesture when you need to. So now I'll put the Renault logo in and on the front end, and then throw in maybe on the center cap of the front wheel. And if you look through all the lines that create the body, you can still see the original structure. You can see the pass side wheel, and you can see the pass side front wheel and the pass side rear wheel. So all those original lines are still there, but now you can see the importance of making them very light, because they do recede into the background as you add more and more elements to the surface of the car. So that's why it's important to be able to control your line quality. No matter what material you're drawing with, even in a digital space, you can control what recedes back in space and what is prominent in your drawing by the weight of your lines. And you can see how these lessons build on each other. We talked about line weight in an earlier video. We had a lot of videos talking about line quality, and now you can see why all those things are so important, because as you get into more sophisticated drawings, all those elements come together to allow you to represent your design idea in the best way possible. Okay, so you see I'm leaning on my pencil a little bit more, and I'm going to define the overall volume of this vehicle. Hitting that edge a little bit darker, a little bit heavier with my pencil, and creating that sense of solidity in the car. One thing that I would recommend including in all your pencil drawings is section lines, which tell the story of the surface of your vehicle. And you can use lines going across the surface like I'm doing, or you can use section shading. Either one will work. Another secret to a successful perspective sketch is putting in your ground shadows. You can see that's what I'm doing here. Ground shadow is basically caused by the sun or any light source casting a shadow on the ground by the vehicle. Now, one thing you might be saying is, hey, I've seen these other guys on YouTube, I've seen these guys do all these sketches and they're not doing all these steps. Why do I have to do all these steps? The reason is that those guys have done their 10,000 hours. They've done their 50,000 car sketches. And when you get to that point of proficiency, you don't have to do all these steps. You can eliminate some of them and still have a beautiful, believable sketch. But if you're not at that level and you're still struggling with these basics, it will serve you, it will be in your best interest to make sure that you include all these steps so you can get to the point where you can then do them in your head like those guys are doing. That's why they can leave them out. They're still doing them, they're just not doing them on the page. They're doing them in their head and then starting, say, 4 steps further down the process because they've done all that other work in their head because they've done so many sketches. So once again, I'd like to thank Mark for sponsoring this episode. If you'd like to find out about sponsoring an episode or to get some tutoring, check out the howtodrawcars.net website. The link's in the description below. And come on by and we'll see if we can work together to take your car design drawings and your car design abilities to the next level. So as I'm finishing up here, let's go over the secrets to building a perspective drawing. Number 1, put in your ground plane. Sit the car on a surface in the world. Number 2, build your structure, your 2-point perspective scaffolding, and make sure that your lines are accurate. Number 3, build your wheels out off of the same perspective structure. 4, put in your interior. Interior is very important to creating a believable car sketch. Number 5, hang the body on the structure that you've created. Number 6, add your ground shadows to create a sense of volume that the car is casting a shadow on the ground. So here we have the original sketch, Mark's original sketch, where a lot of those elements were missing. And then we can take a look at the final sketch, the demo sketch, where all those elements were incorporated. Let me know if you have any questions. Please subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.